Two formation. Race change now. We go racing for the first time this season. 3 hours of GT action. It's go.
This is very tight as they come down. Group of cars coming in. This has all got trouble written all over it. This is G3 cars.
Drop downhill there, head towards the Aqua Minerale. Imola, of course. There's another one off through the gravel. As wide as possible as they drop downhill, putting that from the inside line. Yes, he did. Through he goes.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome back then to another Apex Online Racing stream here for round number 4 of the GT3 series, where we've got our guys from Tier 2 that are going to be taking to the mountain this evening. It's such an Australian masterpiece of a circuit, and we saw how it all kicked off yesterday in Tier 1. I'm sure that, as always, our Tier 2 drivers will be putting on a spectacular show, as always, for this 60-minute race this evening. And joining me in the commentary box after a little bit of time away from one another the last couple of weeks, Tim Lunn, my good friend. How are you doing?
I am all good, my good sir. It's yeah, good to be back in the booth with you. It's been on and off, hasn't it, really? It's like you were here, then I was here, and now we're both back together. So hopefully it'll be a class act for everyone this evening now that we're both back together. Truly brothers in arms once again. And what a track we're taking on. It's going to be interesting to say the least this evening. When you look at the circuit, not only have you got the fabled mountain, but you've got corners such as Hell Corner. I mean, it doesn't fill you with a great lot of sort of confidence, does it? And corners like Forest Elbow as well. It's going to be, I imagine, full of incidents, whether it's be car on car or just car on concrete barriers. I think we're probably going to see some extra pit visits this evening.
Yeah, it does always tend to be the case, doesn't it, with Bathurst? It's such a driver's track, and it keeps you on edge non-stop. And, you know, it's concrete walls all over the top of the mountain, leaving no margin of error. And you have that big drag race all the way down from Forest Elbow through Conrod Straight and into the chase. And, you know, we saw even the likes of reigning Tier 1 champion Tingo van der Velde yesterday in Tier 1 having a bit of an incident. I think it was with Gert Fischer on the final lap of the race, because when you get to the mountain section, it's so difficult to actually make an overtake. So really, the bulk of the opportunities are on that run through into the chase, and also up towards turn 2, where it is effectively a game of you need that inside line, otherwise chances are you'll be hung out to dry and dropping positions in the process. So it's such an intense race around here, and always puts on an amazing show. First drivers are just making their way around to start their first laps in qualifying. We've got Alexa Gates, who is about to get underway in that BUSR liveried Mercedes, a car that traditionally runs quite well here, but we did see yesterday it was pretty much Honda domination.
Not many Hondas in Tier 2, though, is there? I think I was talking with, oh god, I'm trying to think who it was last week, one of our Porsche drivers, and they were saying that they felt the car was very confident over the mountain section, basically from Quarry Bend all the way to Forest Elbow, they really felt like it was a strong car. To apologise. But then actually when it came to, say, Mountain Straight or Conrod Straight, anything that side of the circuit, they were really, really struggling. Instead that obviously the Mercedes and some of the big, sort of these big powerful cars, that's where they'd really take advantage. But to be fair, Alexa Gates really does seem to have that car planted as she currently is climbing up through the mountain on her first flyer, and has actually managed to pull away. There's a little pack of cars that have all stayed together, this sort of bunch, although they are possibly going to catch up with some slower cars that are just...
Sorry, Alexa Gates just unfortunately clipping the wall on the exit of, I think that was turn 9, and giving us a perfect example as to how unforgiving the concrete walls around here can be. Has managed to keep the momentum going in that car, but yeah, I think you're right that the Porsches are definitely in for a tough time. You know, Luke Whitehead, he won the first 3 races in Tier 1 over the last few weeks, and he managed to get a top 10 in the end. Qualifying, I think qualified outside of the top 10, down in around 14th position. So yeah, the Porsche drivers, they might have confidence in the car this evening. They'll probably be praying for some sort of form of rain to try to spice things up a bit and maybe give them that bit of an edge in that cornering capability that car inherently has. But yeah, in terms of overtaking opportunities, it is very few and far between when you're in that sort of car.
So it's just gone on my cams. I appear to have lost everything suddenly. There we go. That was just my game. Apologies about that. I was having a bit of a panic that I got disconnected there. Hopefully no disconnection issues this time round. I had some odd things pre-race last time with the 90 minutes of Hungaroring. Although, to be fair, quite a stable race, internet-wise. It ended up turning out to be, which is good. Okay, so first flying lap starting to come in now. Everyone just... Well, they're starting to break into the 2 minutes already, aren't they? I wonder if we're going to see anyone dropping into the 159s or 158s.
Yeah, I think in practice we got as far down as a low 0.6, a 2-minute 0.6 from one of the Hondas. I think it was Janis Reinders that in the 500s. It's currently in P3, but generally speaking around here, the Mercedes and the Honda have traditionally been the cars to watch. The Mercedes, not quite as dominant as it once was. It has gone through a lot of revisions in terms of BOP in recent updates, and this was about the one circuit where it actually received a nerf. I think everywhere else it had a power buff. There was a bit of a revamp. We've got a fantastic shot as Avelay going through the crest in towards top of the mountain. Such a fantastic series of camera shots through here and really pushing that Mercedes to the limit as he goes into McPhillamy Park. But yeah, that car just was so powerful around here because of a few different reasons. It used to have amazing raw power down the back straight and an abundance of torque on the run up towards turn 2. And also, very good electronics in that car in terms of ABS, and that made it quite comfortable in terms of the tricky braking zone through Skyline and into the dipper. So that was where the Mercedes would shine. The Honda, on the other hand, powerful car again, but it's got agility on its side. Mid-engine layout, a bit of a tricky one to handle, like the Porsche, but it does manage to weave its way through some of the corners quite nicely. So, you know, right now, I think we've got Mercedes and Hondas only in the top 6, but a pretty impressive effort from Barnabas Fazekas right now in P7 and the Lamborghini. So we might see some other manufacturers mixing up at the front of the field, but it does look like... Oh, speaking of which, there we go, Mellis just doing exactly that in the Ferrari. Number 15 car goes up to provisional pole position. Obviously, man took a stellar win at Coulter in round 2. And yeah, showing that the Ferrari may still have some pace around here.
Indeed, and I think Jay Fang as well in that BMW is currently 0.6 up on his lap. Maybe
Championship leader.
Yeah. What can you do here? Oh, only up to 8th position. I think he lost a lot of time in that final turn.
I think we've got Grabowski that's about to go very quick. 4/10 clear the rest of the field. 2-minute 0.2. That is a mighty time from the number 41 Honda. And also Alejandro Avelay in the Mercedes. He's only up as far as the cutting at turn 4. And he's already found 0.6 of a second. That could be a huge time from the number 23 car.
Yeah, if he can maintain this kind of pace, it's here that's hard to maintain it. You're pushing yourself absolutely to the limit over the top of the mountain. And there's just no runoff whatsoever. As I tried to explain last week when we were at Hungaro, the difference in risk you can take. Hungaroring, plenty of places that you can go a little bit wide. Yes, you're risking track limits, but you can manage those quite well. Here you don't have that option. It is all or nothing. It is, you know, absolutely to the wall the entire time.
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt, yeah. I think figuratively and literally around this circuit, you absolutely have to extract everything. And right now, he's got through the bulk of that lap, and he's still maintaining that half-second advantage. Or maybe actually just dropped to 10th on the run down Conrad Straight, flashing the lights furiously to get one of the other Mercedes out of the way in front. That is the number 43 car. That is KUNOS-Simulazioni that is just going into the chase now. I don't think should compromise Avellay at all. It looks pretty tidy through 21 and 22, and it's looking good on the run up in towards Murray's Corner. Avellay trying to go for a stellar lap time. I don't think it'll be in the 59s. It's going to be close, though. 6 cents of improvement, 2-minute point 1 for Avellay as he hits the time. Being fantastic effort there from the 23 car.
Josh Waring again has just given himself a little bit more time as well, up into 3rd place provisionally now. These big time increases, I think, are going to start disappearing. Although saying that, apparently Matt York is 3.1 seconds up on his time, currently running in 29th position, so obviously hasn't put in a full flyer yet. But again, first season in the Audi this time round. So this will probably be the first time he's actually raced here in the Audi as well.
Yeah, maybe a little bit of a tricky one to wield around this circuit as well, because it's got a pretty good aero package on board, that car, but it does... The Audi's always had a little bit of a characteristic of burning through its rear tyres. I think the Evo edition was better than its predecessor, but sometimes over a long distance can be a bit tricky to wheel. So it'll be interesting to see how Matt gets on in that car, because we have always seen a bit of a theme that qualifying maybe not quite his strong suit, but in the race, usually pretty good consistent racecraft from the British.
Yeah, and this is definitely the kind of circuit where you can make up some points just by being smart with your racing, like letting people squabble, keeping a little bit of a gap, and let you say over the top of the mountain, if you're trying to overtake you, going side by side or bumper to bumper there, the risk of making a mistake absolutely just explodes exponentially. So sometimes just playing the long game, holding back a little bit from the guys in front, let them make a mistake, you can sneak past a pair of them. Absolutely spot on. That is where someone like Matt York, say an experienced Tier 2 racer, really does show that sort of that experience up here at sort of in this high end of racing.
Yeah, without doubt. We're just looking at Lois Rainier in the 83 Porsche. He's actually lined himself up, I think, quite nicely. Oh, I thought he was going to get more of a tow than that off the Honda. Of course, the man that took the race victory at the opener had a torrid time at COTA, and then it was a DNF at the Hungaroring. So he's gone from being the championship leader down to 11th place, dropping 7 positions after round 3. And it's going to be tricky for the Frenchman to really bounce back on this round at least. He has got some other circuits coming up. Catalonia, Suzuka will be very much in favour of the Porsche again, but tonight is going to be a tricky one, I think, for the 83 car. Makes his way into a top 20, but when you've got the likes of Casangina, who's got a stellar effort right now in one of the sister Porsches, well within the top 10, currently in P8, and I think also after last week was very much up there in terms of championship as well. Yeah, currently 3rd in the standings, so yeah, great effort from the French compatriot there, but yeah, for Lois Rainier, maybe wanting to extract a bit more out of that car before session ends.
Someone trying to extract as much as possible at the moment is car number 500 of Reinders, 0.2 up on his time, so should be a little bit improvement. But was running in 7th and is now running up into 6th place, so 1 place improved. And at this point, if people want to put in another flying lap, they really need to be out. Oh, and a mistake there though from Reinders. Hits the grass just as he was joining Mountain Straight. Masses of time loss. So this will not be a good lap for him. Oh, hello. Our pole man, or our pole sitter, apologies, is currently up on its time.
Yeah, he's found a couple of tenths or so, hasn't he?
Just holding on to it. And this is where the Mercedes is now going to be strongest, thundering down the hill.
Oh, sorry to cut you off there. KUNOS-Simulazioni I was also keeping an eye on. Was about 7/10 a second up. He's made a big mistake at the end of Conrad Straight. He's lost it all, so disappointment there for the Hungarian driver. Won't be improving, but yeah, Avalate, he's there or thereabouts.
Oh, Alexa Gates and Jay Fang as well, actually, doing really, really well. Alexa Gates 0.5 up on her time. Oh, she makes a mistake right at the end, but I think she managed to keep it clean and up into 8th place. How on earth that did not void the lap? I have no idea. Taking way too much exit curve and unsettling the Mercedes when she planted her throttle for the line. Somehow kept it going, but that could have been an even faster lap if I hadn't quite lost that little bit of control.
Yeah, and I think unfortunately there'll be no more. Oh, maybe actually. I think Alexa is already out on circuit then, and she has just about got enough time, I think. She has to crack on with it because it was about 2:10 or something when she exited the pit lane, and Avalate, who did improve on his time, went down to, a 2:0. So we're making our way closer to those 59s. Now the Mercedes driver has an extra 1/10.5 in hand over the 41 of Grabowski, who won't be improving any further. So the number 41 car won't be on an improvement. It doesn't look like Avalate will improve on this lap either, but I think may just about have enough time to go round again. Be very close, and with a lot of drivers maybe bunching up as they make their way towards Murray's, could miss out on the timing beam by a small smidge. We'll have to see how that all plays out. We've got Florence just making their way down into Forest Elbow. Has found a couple of tenths or so in the Honda. Back down to 1, so maybe good enough to snatch P3 away from Josh Waring. We've also got KUNOS-Simulazioni, who's a bit further down in the lap, and he's found 3/10 still. I think not the improvement that he is capable of in that car, because he was 7/10 up at this point as well, and he lost it all on the previous lap. Takes a chunk of apex through Murray's corner, 2/10 up. I think the improvement is good enough for P9 for the time being, but I think he would have been hoping for a bit more than that, but still has an opportunity to get a lap in.
Just keeping an eye on people. Noworth, who's currently running in 18th, we've seen some really good results from him this season, actually. A little bit further down the grid than he would have wanted to be. Be interesting to see how the Aston Martin does. But he is 0.1 up on his time, just coming into the final turn now, whether he can hold it together or maybe gain some time. Oh, he actually has found a little bit of time. There we go, up into 16th place provisionally at the moment.
I think crucially also the last car to cross the line as well before the time ran out. So I don't think anyone else that is behind is going to be able to start another lap. There's a few other improvements coming on through, notably further up the order. In 8th place at the moment, Reinders has found half a second. He went from 2/10 up to 3/10 in the space of one corner. This could be a mighty time to try to challenge towards the front row of the grid. It's now 6/10 on the exit of Murray's corner. Reinders, he hits time beam, good enough for P3 in that 500 Honda, but there are still other times coming through.
Yeah, Josh Waring and Max Florence as well, both up on their times at the moment. Seeing a lot of yellow flags appearing, and I think a lot of these people were just thinking to themselves, it's my last lap, let's just go absolutely to the limit, not worrying about being able to put in multiples, just thinking this is the final in-lap for me. And I'm seeing yellow flags all over the place at the moment.
I think that was for Zikos. I think Zikos went purple very briefly. I think maybe had a small moment over the mountain, if you can call any moment over the mountain small. It usually does end up in quite a disastrous event. Josh Waring going purple, actually, on his lap. We've got Fazekas further on that is finishing a lap of his own in the 995 Lamborghini on a big improvement. 4/10 up, trying to make his way into towards top 10. 6th place. Fantastic effort for him. And, oh, what happened to Waring? So Josh Waring, who was on an improvement, and they were going purple through the dipper then. Just going to hop back on the replay, just see if we can catch what happened. Got a little bit squiffy through the dipper. We're still keeping the lap going on the way in towards Forest Elbow. Turns into turn 18 and just carries way too much speed on the exit. Clobbers the wall and then straight into the wall on the opposite side as well. And there was also no further improvement for Avalate, who was trying to improve at the end of that session. But the Spaniard not able to do anything more than a 2-minute 0.0 lap time there. But what a fantastic qualifying session we've had there.
I want to quickly point out, actually, as well, that Reinders, the car number 500, which is our third place sitter at the moment, is still running with 5 kilograms of extra ballast as well. So, fair play. That's, you know, the extra little bit of weight. It might only be 5 kilograms, but when it comes to racing, 5 kilograms is like humping a dead moose round in the back of your car. So it's it is a lot of weight to be carrying around in that car. But yeah, as we're seeing again, it's Honda's absolutely dominating the top 10 really here, isn't it? It's all but pole position. The top 5's all Hondas.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think actually that really goes to show Avalay's time there. There was a bit more of a mix-up of Mercedes out there in the early stages of qualifying, but the Spaniard doing a fantastic job to extract an extra 10.5 clear of the rest of the field. So, you know, and also I think traditionally, now that Mercedes, no doubt it is quick around here, and as proven by Alejandro in that session, but it is likely to maybe take a bit more out of its front tyres during the course of this race, and it's the front tyre degradation that usually ends up biting people over the top of the mountain, because it's so easy to understeer into a wall, whether it be the exit Forest Elbow, whether it be through McPhillamy Park and going wide on the grass and now having a dramatic moment into Skyline. It's all relying on those front tyres, and the Mercedes does tend to take a bit more out of those than the Honda. The Honda can get tricky in the rear. It can certainly be a twitchy car, there's no doubt. But if you're used to accommodating that over the course of a race stint, it may be the more stable of the two platforms. So it'll be really interesting to see how Avalay gets on in defending against that quadruplet of Hondas behind. So I'll run through the order then that makes up our race for this evening of 30 cars. So Avalay, fantastic pole position for the Spaniard then in the 23 Mercedes, followed up by Grabowski, the first of our Hondas, and then it is Reinders in P3 with Florence and Josh Waring to round out the top 5. And then a fantastic lap time from Barnabas Fazekas in the 995 Lamborghini. And I think a pretty exceptional effort in the Italian car there, because that is a platform that is a difficult one to extract pace out of, and really doing a great job there. Speaking of Italians, in Italian cars, Alessio Mellis in the number 15 Ferrari, starting in P7 with Chris Sikos next of our Mercedes in P8, and then Jay Fang, championship leader, the first of the BMWs, into 9th position. And we saw the BMWs be pretty handy in race trim yesterday in Tier 1, so the 24 car will be hoping to make his way up through the order and get some extra points from this. Huna Horchi rounds out the top 10 with Alexa Gates in P11, and then the first of our Porsches by a big margin, Casagine, a fantastic effort from the 911 car, starts in 12th position. Sachecki in the 114 Mercedes starts 13th place with Jimmy Holm in the 777 Honda in P14, and Christopher Poden is one of the big movers in the championship from last week, starting in 15th position in the first of the Aston Martins. Seminara, race winner from last time out, starts in 16th place with Neuwirth, Matt York, Steinhauser and Giacomelli rounding out the top 20 drivers in that. And then we have Jeffrey Miguel Renault Ritchie, who had a bit of a difficult end to last week's race. I think a very spontaneous connection issue, unfortunately, took him out of the running and also out of the championship lead. So he'll be looking to bounce back in all of this. Bart Raven, who I've seen has already got some support in the chat for tonight, as well as Avalay starting in 22nd position. Lois Rania, the Frenchman, starting in 23rd, with previous fan favourite Van Meerveld to start in 24th place. Hans Peter starting in 25th in the next one of the Audis, and then we have a Porsche trio in the forms of Nicholas Hurt, Cornercrack and Rattiani, and both Nicholas Hurt and Cornercrack have showed tremendous pace earlier on in the season, so they'll be I think a little bit disappointed with that, but that just goes to show how tricky the Porsche is to extract pace around it. And then rounding out the grid, Arnaud Brun in the 910 Ferrari and Xavier Rimbaud in the 226 Audi to complete our grid for this evening. 60 minutes of action ahead of us. I think it's going to be a pretty good one.
Yeah, going back quickly to what you were saying, obviously, about the Mercedes wearing its front tyres as well. We saw it definitely last season that the Mercedes takes a few laps more than some of its other rivals to turn its tyres on. Oh, car number 41.
Yeah, Grabowski, front man that was going to start on the front row alongside Averley, is in the pits. So
whether a mistake, whether they had the wrong setup and suddenly realised they're going to be running qualifying fuel and decided to just go into the pits.
The alternative is that they didn't hit drive in time, but that is one way or another. That is a disaster for Grabowski. So, yeah, I mean, the grid will get reshuffled, so that space will be immediately filled up by Reinders, but for the 41 Honda, I don't know, who knows? We know that car has pace, and it could be a blessing, depending on how this lap 1 goes. Now, I don't want to commentate or curse anything too much, but we do often see that we can have quite the calamity over the mountain, whether it be on the first lap or a couple laps in, because it's such a busy section of the circuit. So maybe being about 20 seconds behind the next car could actually be a bit of a blessing for Grabowski there, but certainly not the way they would have wanted to have started, because I think front row seat for the opening lap would have certainly been a far more ideal way to start this race.
Yeah, definitely would have wanted to be right up there, and now starting all the way from the back on tyres that are going to be absolutely stone cold as well. Like you said, there is the possibility there could be an incident. He could gain some positions, but he had the opportunity to essentially to go immediately for first position. He could have had pole at the very beginning. He could have got a good start and gone from there, and now that opportunity has gone. He's gone from possibly one overtake and then free run for the entire race to battling the way through the entire field. So it's going to be an interesting one to see how they get on this evening.
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt, and just what a big pain for Grabowski. I'm just looking at his previous results at 14th, 18th, and 24th. So starting on the front row, by far his best qualifying and just overall chances of getting a podium. So really not ideal for him whatsoever. Meanwhile, looking at our pole sitters results, Averley, previous best finish, a 3rd place. One of the few drivers that went for that daring strategy on the for the tyres in Kota round 2, alongside the likes of Mellis, who was able to, right at the very end of that race, snatch victory from the Visual Esports car of Jeffrey McGill, Renault Ritchie, and was able to get a fantastic result there for the Italian driver. But Averley hasn't had anything better than that podium, the 13th and a 23rd in the other 2 races. So the Mercedes driver starting on pole position, and now with the likes of Grabowski, the next nearest competitor, starting in the pit lane. Obviously, Reinders taking that spot. I say that the way that the formation is going at the moment, perhaps not. So in actual fact, Averley may have a very clean view in towards Hell's Corner for the very first time, but I imagine once that 41 car makes their way out of the pit lane, we will have 30 cars to get underway with 60 minutes of action here at the mountain for this evening. A round 4 of the Apex Online Racing GT3 Series of Tier 2. Will the Spaniard be able to better his previous result? We'll have to wait and see. It's a dream start for 23 as they wait for lights out. And there we go. And easy pickings in towards turn 1 there for Averley that leads at Hell's Corner. It's all side-by-side action just behind him. And Reinders defending that inside line with Florence onto the grass already as they climb up towards turn 2 for the first time. But right now, 23 car leading the way as they all have that drag race up towards Griffin's Bend.
Car number 5
oh,
is
dear.
off. That is Hans-Peter, I think. So I'll jump back and keep an eye on that one.
Yeah, that is very unfortunate and a slightly unusual play. It's 41 car. Someone else actually has just made their way past 29 that has just gone past Hans-Peter. So I'm not sure if there was some other incidents involved in that. It was Rattiani, and Grabowski has just exited the pit lane. But right now, Averley leading at the front of the field as they head onto the mountain for the very first time. A few swappings of positions further down the orders, 2 by 2 they go, with the likes of Richie, Matt York and Vince van Meerveld side by side as they go in towards turn 10. Almost contact there, but the Audi sweeping around the outside just behind as well. Bart Raven, I think, losing a position as a couple of drivers clipping the concrete as they head through in towards McPhillamys Park for the very first time. A second, though, is the gap between your race leader and second place at the front of the field. So great start there for Averley in that number 23 Mercedes as they all filter down into Forest Elbow. But for the most part, it looks like it's been a pretty clean getaway for the majority of the grid.
Yeah, that incident on turn 1, I think actually quite luckily car number 5, it did get a bit of rear end contact. Oh, there's a yellow flag there, so I think we must have had another incident. So I think I just commentated them, cursed them by saying that they didn't look too damaged. But yeah, they didn't look too bad. But car number 29 as well, not sure what happened with them.
Oh, a big dive on the brakes from Seminara in the 112 car. Race winner from last week, trying to go down around the outside of Jimmy Holm. Voltec Neuwirth following through as well. It all gets very busy. Several yellow flags on the exit of the chase there. We'll try to catch that in a moment. Seminara has got through in all of that. Neuwirth has as well. Drag race now between Meerveld and Matt York on the run up towards Hell's Corner once more. And it's Meerveld that goes through, and Lloyd's Radiant, big dive, trying to take 2 for the price of 1. And Matt York's around on the exit of Hell's Corner there. Giacomelli going through that as well. Someone else is off in the background. I think that was Arnaud Brun that went towards the outside there. So further incidents taking place on the mountain already.
Yeah, cars 14 and 420, they were both involved. That's 2 Porsches involved in the lap 1 incident as well, right at the end of the oh, that's a close one. And car number 14 coming into the pits. Not sure about 420. Did end up losing that one sort of in the pack. Yeah, a lot of incidents on lap 1. Real shame to see it.
Yeah, that is very unfortunate. Just looking at further up on the field, 2.5 seconds the lead that Averley has over Florence. What it is about this circuit over the last couple of days, because we saw Abelatzi in Tier 1 yesterday, took a dominant victory in the end around here. Right now, Averley really trying to repeat that amazing gap that he has over the field already. So that car working very nicely in the early phase of the race. And Fazekas up to P4 already in the Lamborghini. So that's been a stellar effort. There's a big incident, I think, in the middle of the mountain. That's Neuwirth that's gone around. We'll try and see if we can catch that. I think he's got it all wrong by himself on the run down into the dipper. Somehow doesn't get collected by any of the cars that were following very close behind the number 63 car. Gets underway again, and thankfully I think has rejoined fairly well, at least unscathed in relative terms for Bathurst. Usually when it goes wrong big time. And possible move here from Alexa Gates towards Jay Fang, but is unable to do so there. But that's very unfortunate for Neuwirth, who is running 7th in the championship and was a podium finisher last week, so not how he would have wanted to have started this one.
No, he would have been very disappointed. Luckily, managed to avoid, obviously, as you said, an incident with his initial spin. His rejoin nearly caused an incident, though, just where I think he was trying to get the car into reverse. And sometimes we all know what Assetto Corsa is like. It could just decide, no, you can't have reverse gear. And he was stuck on the track for a minute or two there. Desperately, you could see him trying to get the car to move, but luckily did get out of the way. And he is now coming into the pits, Neuwirth. So obviously carrying a decent amount of damage. I decided to pit immediately. But this is a long way to go. 55 minutes to try to keep the car clean that entire time. And trying to make the tyres last here for 55 minutes if he's now going to try and run a single stop. It's a very early stop. It's a big risk.
Oh, I saw a white flag there for a moment, and I think Rimbaud may have let Arnaud Brun go through, indicating over to the right-hand side of the circuit, and yeah, completely let the Ferrari driver go through. So whether or not that is in response to anything that we saw on the exit of Hell Corner at the beginning of this race, I'm not entirely sure. I have to say, though, Averley right now, 3.2 seconds now the gap to P2. Absolutely flying is the Spaniard at the front of this field. Last time around was a second faster than anybody else on circuit. I know that he's got a very clear view in front of him. Right now he is just putting in qualifying laps in that Mercedes. So it's been a stellar effort so far from the Spanish driver. We've got a bit of a four-way fight for the battle for P9 here, as Jay Fang has managed to escape a little bit away from Alex Gates in that Mercedes, and it's Casangina, Podens, Stachecki, and Seminara trying to close in on the back of this as well. I think Podens may be in a position trying to do something about Casangina. We know the poor straight line speed is a weakness. He looks left, looks right, down towards the inside line now as they go in towards the chase there, side by side, tricky stuff. I saw a kick of dirt up in front as well, and there's foam everywhere. What has happened in front there? That's Krzyzikos and Unihorchi. Podens has got caught out in all of that as well. Across the grass they go. Jay Fang as well in all that. What on earth has happened at the bottom of the chase there? It's still kicking off further down the order. We'll try to see if we can catch what happened further up the field, but that was complete chaos. So we're looking now at Unihorchi on the replay. I think so. Zikos loses it under braking. Unihorchi there on the run. So it's the Mercedes causing complete chaos there. The Ferrari of Melis, Unihorchi, Jay Fang all having to take evasive action. Podens then comes on through, gets tagged by the Mercedes after trying to make a move. Seminara dances his way through. I think gains about 4 positions in the space of 1 corner, and a complete reshuffle of the grid, all off the back of one mistake from Zikos there on the run in towards that turn.
It just unfolds so quickly at Bathurst. Even though this isn't even the walled-in section, you're going from such a high-speed downhill run. Your foot's firmly to the floor. You look at the other drivers around you, just thinking, I've got to outbrake them. It's so easy to make a mistake, and as we see just here, and suddenly everyone's on you, and everyone is going absolutely flat out, and they are already either on the throttle fully, or they are on the brakes fully already. There is no half and half between, and so if you come into traffic that's suddenly in front of you and you weren't expecting it, and you can't brake any harder, sometimes there really is nowhere to go. And still on that right hand side of the track, big wall to try and avoid. It's just, yeah, real shame. A lot of drivers being shaken up, but the top 5 keeping it together somehow. I think this is going to be a race of attrition, isn't it? It really is going to be a case of who can survive the longest out here without crashing or getting caught up in an incident, because even the leaders now, they're not actually that far off the back markers. This is the problem, is going to be that these guys are pushing so quickly that there is the possibility they are going to start catching up with people that are involved in incidents. You think car number 99 is just leaving the pits now as our leader comes across the line. That's definitely going to get caught over the mountain. There's no way a car on cold tyres is going to be able to outrun Avelay. Like, Avelay has been absolutely flying, and they're both on mountain straight now. And with blue flags, there's nowhere to go at the top of the mountain, though, is there? There's no way you can really move out the way. So this is where it's going to start getting a little bit dicey, when blue flags start coming into order, and I did not think we were going to start to see blue flags at 51 minutes left of the race.
Yeah, it's Zonal Brunner's also come into the pits in the 910 Ferrari. But yeah, blue flags is a very tricky thing to try to handle around here, because it is just almost impossible. We look at kind of Hungaroring and we think in that middle sector it's tricky to overtake around there. The mountain is a whole different beast, because there is just almost zero room for error. There's basically only one line through the sector, and it's so quick and so relentless. There's just never an opportunity really to try to give way to another car. Someone that's managed to benefit in all of this very, very nicely, who I think will be a very happy man right now, is Casangina, currently running in P6, trying to keep the Mercedes of Stachecki in the 144 car behind. Oh, it's Podens had a big wiggle on the exit of McPhillamy Park there, just about kept that one all together. In actual fact, Seminara putting some pressure onto Alessio Melis now, so that BMW again in good race trim at the moment. But Casangina currently 3rd in the championship, and is looking to try to make some inroads into the likes of Seminara and Jay Fang. Currently has a good few positions over championship rivals, and then when you look at the likes of Richie, who's much further down the order in his 14th position. Josh Waring is in P3, but is a few points further behind in the standings. So Casangina in that Porsche to be running firmly inside the top 10 is a very good effort indeed from that 911 car.
Yeah, really strong effort to keep the Porsche that far up the grid, and as we've seen, the sheer pace of everyone else around it. I actually was just keeping an eye on Richie versus Steinhauser, and Richie was in the tow the entire time of the Aston Martin, but could only stay level pegging, wasn't able to actually catch and make a move. So all the way down the Conrod Straight, they stayed absolutely level pegging, and so you really get an idea of just the deficit in speed that the Porsche has. It has nothing, even though it's there in the toe. You would expect it to be slightly reeling the cars in front, but it's not. It just manages to hold on level peg.
Yeah, we were just also having a look at Matt York managing to get past Rimbaud.
Florence, he was in second place.
Yeah, Florence, we did actually, catch that. We've gone into the pits extremely early, and I'm not entirely sure why, unless he's got the pressures on board that car very wrong. I find that a very surprising strategy, because I don't think Florence has had any sort of form of contact in this race so far, so very peculiar from the number 42 Honda.
I say, unless we missed some contact with a wall, possibly, all on his own. But yeah, I mean, it really wasn't in traffic. Was putting in 202s, which was really still a stellar effort.
Sorry, we just caught a moment on the replay for Alexa Gates, who had an absolute tank slapper and a half as she came through turn 10 there. Managed to just about gather it all up, but slammed into the inside wall before going into the dip, and then has got Casagina immediately for company. I think that the straight line speed of that Mercedes is still going to be enough to keep the Porsche at bay, but I think could possibly be a little bit of a cork in the bottle over the next few laps, because front aero damage on board that Mercedes is going to slow it down horrendously through that mountain section, and that could really start to prove troublesome as Fazekas, I think Josh Waring must have made a mistake over the last lap at some point, because Fazekas was absolutely glued to the gearbox there of the number 34 Honda. Now Lamborghini trying to put some pressure on as they head in towards Hell Corner. So between the battle for P2, P4, and Poden's also hunting around the BMW of Seminara for P8, we've suddenly got a lot of jewels on our hand for these positions inside the top 10.
Yeah, I just realised the gap for pole is nearly 8 seconds at the moment. That is unbelievable. I mean, I'm very interested to see, as we said earlier, how the tyres on that Mercedes last. Was this just a case of absolutely throwing everything at it this first bit of the race to try and get a bit of a gap, knowing that then possibly the traffic and blue flags may slow everyone down equally and help possibly maintain positions? But 8 seconds in less than 15 minutes is unbelievable. And still the pace is a 2:01.5, which was the last lap and the best lap. So that's unbelievably quick compared to 2:03s and 2:02s from everyone else. I mean, that's an absolutely blistering pace. That is unbelievable. That is, borderline worth an investigation as to how that car is running so fast compared to everyone else.
Yeah, I think that is just man and machine absolutely at one right now. We saw a similar story with Ambulazzi in Tier 1 yesterday, and Avale right now in that 23 Mercedes has got a lot of confidence in that car and is just going from strength to strength. Meanwhile, the drivers behind him battling more and more as time goes on. We saw Stachecki finally managing to use that horsepower and torque on board the Mercedes to make his way past Casagina and manage to get clear of the Porsche very quickly. Seminara again trying to look for an opportunity, very late braking from Poden's there, almost going around the outside. This could be an amazing move from the 69 Aston now, as out of nowhere is going around the outside of the Italian driver into Murray's corner. Then the BMW has the inside line, yellow flags further down the field, switchback potentially for Podens as they head towards turn 1. They're glued to the back of the BMW. Look to the left-hand side, semi-defense from Seminara into that first turn there, but I think the BMW is going to hold on, and I couldn't quite see who it was that was involved in the chaos further down the order, but I think there was a couple of cars that lost a lot of time at the exit of the chase.
I'll be honest, John, I'm struggling to keep up with it all over the place.
It is just one of those races. Poden's now trying to go around the outside of Seminara, and I said you need that inside line, otherwise you'll be hung out to dry. And Jimmy Holm immediately capitalises, says thank you very much, and the 777 Honda makes its way into the top 10 there. So Poden's goes from being the hunter to the hunted and has to settle, actually down to P10. Jimmy Holm in P9 now. in that 777 Honda, and 7R are now trying to run away immediately on the back of that scrap there. But that's the problem with turn 2. You can be alongside, oh, it goes from bad to worse for opponents there. Big clatter of the wall on the exit of turn 9 there, and that may allow Jay Fang behind, who's trying to make his way into the top 10, as Poden's almost pushing the Honda in front of him along through the dipper there. But Poden's, in the space of half a lap, has had potentially quite a big compromise to the rest of his race.
Just looking at how close these cars are running as they're coming down through the mountain. We saw them coming through sort of Skyline, the S's, Dipper. The actual visibility you have there is super limited anyway. Obviously, you can't see the next corner. They're always obscured either by the mountain or by the wall itself. But to then have a car that much in front of you, oh, I see Poden's possibly going to go up the inside now here. No, decides not to. Backs out a little bit, but there might be an opportunity for a little bit of a switchback here. He's going to have a run. Is he going to be able to go around the outside into the final turn? Not quite. No, it actually looks like he's going into the pit. Change of heart. Did have a lot of pace, but obviously deciding to pit for...
Oh, mistake from Fang behind. Almost allowing Steinhauser. Steinhauser actually still has a nose alongside, but Jay Fang quick to try to defend that one. Oh, I thought he was going to go into the back of Jimmy Holm there for a second. Closed up a lot under braking. One of the strengths, obviously, of the BMW stable platform under braking. Also, Josh Waring has just lost out to Fazekas on the run up towards turn 2. So the Lamborghini driver, who I think started around P6 there, now finds his way up onto the second step of the podium. Fantastic stuff from Fazekas in that 995 car. And meanwhile, this four-way fight for the 9th place position is still taking place. But the Lamborghini driver, stellar effort from him to extract the pace out of that car and to stay calm and composed and make up the positions in towards second place. What a brilliant drive from him so far.
Yeah, it was a great little move, actually. Just had the run on him going down Mountain Straight and got it just done in time before Quarry. It'll be really interesting to see, now that he is unleashed and not held up by anyone, what kind of times can Fazekas do, and can anybody take the fight to Avalé? I can't see it happening unless there is an incident of some kind, but be interesting to see what kind of times. At the moment, still Avalé putting in 2:01s, which is blisteringly quick time still. But Avalé actually coming up behind car number 99. Car number 99 is...
That is Chris Sikos, the unfortunate Mercedes that ran into quite the trouble at the end of the chase and caused that rather spontaneous and mad incident into 21, which sent cars left, right and centre.
Yeah, so we have got cars coming up absolutely everywhere in front of them. So this is where that massive lead may dissolve. They're coming towards the mountain, and they're definitely going to be right up the back of these back markers as they come onto the mountain.
As more drivers coming into pits as well. Jay Fang, Richie into the pits as well. A lot of really early pit stops in this race, seemingly strategically as well. And I have to say, I'm very surprised, because as we were kind of discussing previously before we got into this race, that the tyre wear around here is very strong. And I know that, you know, fresh tyres is going to be quite a chunk of an undercut. There's no shadow of doubt over that, but you know, it is possible to make overtakes here. Maybe not over the top of the mountain, but it is definitely possible to make overtakes. So I can't see those tyres just particularly lasting very well in the second phase of this race and being the better strategy overall.
My only thoughts is people have maybe pushed a little bit too hard in this opening half of the race. Maybe they're starting to really get that feeling in the car, like they're trying to go through that graining phase. Maybe they're just thinking, let's just get this done and then maybe take it a little bit easier. There won't be so much traffic around them after they've pitted, or at least that's the plan anyway, a little bit of free air. Maybe that's the plan. If not, yeah, people pitting really early, and I would imagine in a circuit like this where damage is so risky, you would want to try and keep your pit as late as possible in case you need to pit and fix some damage. you know, if you can pit once
Oh,
at the end.
sorry to cut you off there for a moment. We were just going on board with Jay Fang versus Richie on the run up towards turn 2. Little bit of a lag spike then. Almost saw the Porsche get catapulted, but the Porsche came out in front on the exit of the pits there, dropping the position immediately by the time they get to turn 2. But that could have ended so much worse. Sorry to interrupt you there, Tim, but that really took a turn for the worse for a brief moment. But thankfully, nothing too severe in the end between Fang and Richie.
Yeah, luckily coming over the top of the mountain, but you can see that Porsche still really well planted over the top of this section. It does look a lot more comfortable. It's this section here, though, as they come through McPhillamy Park. I've seen a lot of cars get unsettled here. A lot of cars get really unsettled on that exit curb. These two still absolutely nose to tail.
Yeah, they really get rattled around on the entry through that braking zone as well, and that's where the Mercedes is particularly strong, possibly because of, I think, maybe quite a front sort of heavy relative to some of the other cars competing around this circuit, that it has quite a lot of weight over the front axle, which a lot of the time gives it understeer, but it also gives it quite a stable foundation, and sometimes that's what you need. And if you can get past other aspects of the mechanics of the car and the way in which it behaves in high-speed corners by tweaking elements of the downforce, and Grabowski continues the comeback drives, goes down the inside of Bart Raven, who immediately I think is going to go for a switchback here and take the position on the run-up towards the cuttings. The number 41 car not quite able to make his way through past the BMW, but I'm sure we'll have another attempt very shortly. But yeah, that extra weight towards the front of the car just, I think, gives a Mercedes that balance that allows the drivers to really push over the top of the mountain and just make some of these other cars that usually have the agility that you want, it just makes them a little bit too sensitive, a bit too twitchy, and if you're not on the top of your game, the mountain, as we well know, will bite you very quickly and send you off into war, and then that is it. Race done and dusted. And speaking of that Mercedes confidence, Avila still lapping in the 201s, half a second clear of the next fastest car on circuit, which last time around was Casangina, actually, in the 911 Porsche. So that car clearly has some sort of form of pace, but just can't really execute it in the fashion that we would not ordinarily see in the Porsche at most other circuits. Oh, it's Meerveld's off. Meerveld has gone off towards the chase there, has brought out the yellow flag, and we didn't quite catch the start of that, unfortunately, but just seems to have completely ground to a halt. So the 229 car has had an incident there. Meanwhile, has retired to the pits as well. And meanwhile, I think Grabowski did manage to get the run down past Bart Raven in towards the chase there, and has got himself up into P11. Of course, this is before everyone else has pitted. But number 41 car continuing his recovery through the field.
Yeah, I mean, I watched all the way back to Forest Elbow, and I couldn't really see a reason as to why Meerveld he just seemed to be losing pace. So whether that was a hardware issue possibly, or did he run out of fuel? Did he go one too many laps and just ran out of fuel on the downhill stretch? I mean, I'm surprised he didn't try and just keep it going. But yeah, there we go, in the pits, and seemingly just gonna have to wait it out and see what happens.
Yeah, it's a bit of an unusual one. He's very rarely is a driver that gives up early in a race as Van Meerveld. We've seen him have some very difficult days in the cockpit, and quite often seeing each of them through, unless it really has gone quite awfully wrong. So I can only imagine that it might well be a technical issue for Van Meerveld. And looking at our drivers on circuit, 13 seconds now, the gap between Avila and Fazekas in the Lamborghini, currently sitting in second place. Josh Waring still in touching distance in P3 at the moment, and it's Alexa Gelix who is having the best performance of her season so far, running around in P4. Saw a yellow flag out for... Oh, it's Grabowski has had what is going on there with the 41's car? Looked like we had gone into Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift there for a moment. We've just gone back on the replay. I think it had some sort of form of connection issues, but prior to that, had an issue down the mountain, by the looks of it, through the dipper then, and going, oh dear, oh, that's got very confusing and busy, and Bart Raven didn't have any clue what was going on there either. And I think, unfortunately, a tiny bit of contact made between those two cars, a few hits further on the Honda as well. That is not something that I've particularly seen before, and unsurprisingly, the 41 car immediately going into the pit. So I wonder if there's been some sort of form of connection issue, and that may have been the cause for Grabowski's lack of starting the race earlier on. I'm not too sure. Maybe didn't want to risk having an issue like that, as Jay Fang and Richie now side by side on the run through the chase there, and I think Richie in the end having to back out of that one. Didn't have the straight line speed to compete with the BMW, but a couple of very curious and interesting moments over the last couple of laps.
No, look now, also, we're still obviously keeping an eye on our leader as they make their way through the back markers. To be fair, everyone around them being very, very courteous, giving way. No real need to go for anything too crazy. Actually, our leader coming up behind car number 29, I believe, one of the Porsches. We'll see what happens here as they come down the... which straight is this? That's the Conrod straight. That's the one. I knew it was one of the straights. I couldn't remember which. Oh, although to be fair, I thought there was going to be a chance, an opportunity to get through there, but not happening. Door not opened.
Someone over did manage to open a door, actually was just behind, was Zikos versus Arnaud Brun, went storming down the inside, and actual fact, a little bit of contact there as well, which Brun was not too happy about on the exit, but managing to make his way through. Okay,
just found out what happened to Vince Van Meerveld. That was the steering wheel failure. So there we go. He's just come up in our chat letting us know that yeah, his steering wheel is completely dead. So there we go, hardware failure. I mean, we see it in real motorsport as well, engine failures or people having suspension failures, but there we go. Have that. So that'll be why he just kept going straight at the end of that, at the end of the Conrod straight, and just couldn't do anything, and just luckily managed to, but luckily it let go where it did, to be fair. Could have been a lot worse. If that had happened at the top of the mountain, that could have been a real issue, not just for himself, but other racers as well.
Yeah, without a doubt. Also, the fact they didn't happen earlier on in the race when there were drivers closer around him. So that is a big disappointment there, unfortunately, for Van Meerveld. Hopefully, he can have that sorted for next week. A couple more drivers have come into the pits in the form of Alexa Gates and Matt York. And it's now only currently 9 cars that haven't done their pit stops. And we still haven't even got to the halfway point in this race yet, as Jay Fang takes a chunk of curb heading through turn 22 then, and I was about to say looking like he was going to fake his way towards the pits, but that wouldn't be too impactful because both him and Richie have already done their pit stop, so it wouldn't be too much benefit in all of that. But it's going to be very interesting to see. I mean, just looking at the lap times, so Jay Fang and Richie are probably somewhat representative pace of the rest of the field, as Avilé for the first time, I think, all raced, has gone slower than some of the other cars around him, so maybe caught a little bit of traffic. Still 13 seconds over lead for the 23 car. Did a 202.4 last time round. Meanwhile, Fazekas 202.3. Same for Cass and Gina, 202.1 for Stachecki, the first of our drivers on that big undercut strategy. And so, you know, even a poor lap is now down to a 202.2 for Avilé. So a poor lap from Avilé was still only around a tenth of a second slower than some of those drivers on the undercut strategy, and I just can't see that in the long run, when it comes to the pace of those tyres, I just can't see that they're really going to last in the way that some of these drivers, I think, are hoping that they're going to. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. The fight between Brun and Zikos has reignited once more. We saw them swap positions not too long ago, and it may happen again with Zikos clattering the wall in towards the exit of turn 2. They're trying to go around the outside. There's Grabowski absolutely wringing the neck of the Honda in the background, closing up to these two. But Zikos there in that 99 Mercedes went for a second attempt. The first one wasn't clean, so he gave back the position. The second one, it was all fair, but unfortunately a mistake there from the number 99 car, and unfortunately for the British driver, is going to be dropping into the clutches of that 41 Honda, I think, very shortly.
Yeah, no doubt. Any damage to that Mercedes is going to send it sort of tumbling down the order. Just looking at actually the front of the grid, huge chunk of cars have all jumped into the pits. I'm trying to think who's who's left. It's pretty much just first and second now that haven't pitted. Well, it's Bart Raven, Avalé, and Fazakaz who have not actually completed their pits.
Yeah, also crucially, Waring coming out in front of Stachecki, and Casangina versus Alexa Gates on the run up towards turn 2. Mercedes power, surely, with that inside line, is going to be the dominant factor here, and Alexa Gates does side the way through in towards turn 2 there, and reclaims that position. I think I will be very pleased about that one, because Casangina, I do believe, was actually behind her before the pit stops. White flag for a moment ago from Bart Raven, who's currently in P3, one of our last drivers not to pit, and that's the reason why, clattering the wall over the crest of turn 9 there. And that is damage, and now race leader finally comes into pit, spot on the halfway mark in the 23 car, so we'll be looking for a nice easy pit stop. Fazakaz also following Avalé in as well, and I'd be interested to see where Josh Waring emerges. There's only a couple of seconds between himself and Fazakaz before the pit stops, and so it'll be interesting to see if that undercut strategy has done anything to close up the gap between the Honda and the Lamborghini. But I think the only driver so far really to benefit from that undercut may have been Stachecki in all of that.
Yeah, looking at times, Fazakaz was still outlapping Josh Waring. That was the only thing. He's still outlapping him by nearly a second. So even after, even on fresher tyres, the cut isn't possibly going to be the right way. It could actually extend the gap even further. It's really going to be an issue of how quickly can Fazakaz get the tyres switched back on. Oh, there we go. Raven into the pits as well now. So car number 23 already rolling out of the pits. Car number 995, is it moving yet? Yes.
Just about now. And Josh Waring is coming towards turn 1. So I think Fazakaz is well clear. And I think, actual fact, again, I'm fairly confident that the overcut has actually been more competitive than the undercut in that case. I think Stachecki, maybe just because of how early on he went on to that undercut strategy. Maybe that's the reason why that Mercedes has been able to benefit from it somewhat. But for the most part, it does look like the overcut strategy may have actually been the way to go, because, yeah, an extra second gained between Waring and Fazakaz. Also, interestingly, Avalé did lose about a second a bit to Fazakaz during all of that, so maybe taking a very cautious entry into the pits, which is perhaps not surprising from our race leader. Really does have the extra time to work with to allow that to happen, and just make sure making no mistakes in this race to compromise a very potential race win at this point.
Yeah, with such a dominant lead, there's no point sort of, trying to risk to try and find a tiny segment of a second when you've got that many seconds to go. Oh, fastest lap of this second half of the race, going to Grabowski. Car number 41, really flying, down in 22nd place at the moment, but absolutely flying. Oh, what a mistake there from Neuwirth, going into the wall as they were going up through the mountain. I think that was the cutting.
Oh yeah, completely just carried in way too much speed. How he actually kept it out of the concrete there, I have no idea. That was very, very close to being a far bigger incident, but yeah, managed to just about gather it all up. I tell you what, that Aston, though, looking very twitchy as he came through McPhillamys as well. So, yeah, Neuwirth not feeling quite as settled in that car as we've seen him in the past. Currently 7th in the standings, and although he had a DNF at the opening round, he's been in the top 5 and had a podium last week in the last 2 races. So, yeah, a difficult day for Neuwirth and Aston Martin, and it's not getting any better. And there's a yellow flag out for somebody. Who is that? I think that is Grabowski. Grabowski again. And I see a lot of damage on the front of Zikos's car as well. Zikos was a bit further down, so I think it's Grabowski that's maybe lost it, and then Brun and Zikos have been collected in all of that. So let's see how it fares. Grabowski over in towards the dip, and now gets it all wrong on the entry, tries to gather it up, and then is parked across the track. Brun almost manages to avoid him, and it's Zikos that absolutely T-bones the Honda, and in actual fact points the 41 car back in the right direction, and quite clearly Grabowski, fastest lap of the race, came out a big penalty, trying to push a bit too hard to get himself back into the race in the second half, and is now coming into the pits Hopefully we'll see the rest of the race through, but certainly I think is looking to repair some damage. So that is very unfortunate for him, Zikos, and Arnaud Brundle. I think Zikos has actually maybe retired to the pits. I'm not sure. I did see the actually wheels down on board the Mercedes, so maybe he's going to get going again. But yeah, disappointing stuff for all three of those drivers there.
Yeah, it's just one of those incidents where it's a really bad place to rotate. He did the right thing and held the brakes. I mean, and you have to decide, are you going to go to the back? Are you going to go to the front? One driver went left, one driver went right, and sadly, trying to squeeze through the front end just wasn't the move to go for. And obviously the Mercedes and the Honda both taking an absolute brutal hit. This is actually the first flying lap for our pole, and oh my God, that first flying lap of Aviles is 2:01.2.
And remember that in the first stint, he got faster as he went on.
Oh, but fair play, Fazekas with a 2:01.665. So a little bit of a gap between them on pace, but still, that is really decent timing.
Yeah, that Lamborghini has had surprisingly good pace.
And really nice to see, actually, again, this season. Nice to see some of these slight obscurities coming through and really showing that actually some of these cars in the right hands can still be super competitive. So, yeah, Fazekas in the Lamborghini, great to see it still up at the pointy end of the field.
Yeah, we've praised Fazekas previously this season. He's had some stellar drives from far down the grid. It's the first time that he's really had competitive pace from the start, because he started well inside the top 10 in qualifying, which was a fantastic feat in itself. And he has been consistent. He's had good racecraft, and right now he's doing a stellar job at really being in contention for second place in this race. Josh Waring is keeping him good company, though, because after the pit stops, that Honda seems to be getting underway back into fine pace once more to maybe put some pressure and close in to try to reclaim the spot that the British driver was holding on for a very long time. I'll tell you what, Aviles has definitely settled back into his groove. He's 0.1 up on his previous lap time. We could see a 2-minute time from the Mercedes driver leading the way as he's opening that gap up to almost 14 seconds, which is not too far away from Abelatzi's final advantage that he had over the rest of the field from yesterday. So Aviles trying to go one better than the Honda driver did in Tier 1 last night. And the only other scraps that we've got on the circuit at the moment is Giacomelli in the SPQ Racing Team Ferrari is putting some pressure onto Wout Neuwirth, who again has gone deep over in towards the dipper. And that Aston Martin just not seeming as settled as we are used to seeing that platform. As the number 14 car has brought out the yellow flag. That's that's Nicholas Hertz that has gone into the gravel at a very unusual moment. Front axle completely lifted over the crest in towards McPhillamy Park, straight into the wall for the Porsche driver. And the man that was previously... he was not having the best of days today, but he was a podium finisher, almost race winner at the opening round of the season. Now, a number 14 car finding himself retired in the pits. So really not what he would have wanted in all of that. Giacomelli hasn't quite been able to apply the pressure to the Aston Martin of Neuwirth in the way that he would have wanted to. Someone that is getting a bit of a move on is Alexa Gates, 2:01.777 in the number 35 Mercedes last time around. A couple of tenths faster than both Stachecki and Casangina just behind, and maybe in a position in the near future she can get into the slipstream of the Mercedes in front and maybe try to make a move towards the end of the chase. Bit of a wiggle on the exit of turn 10 there. Manages to just about gather it all up at a pretty nice, neat and tidy line through there. We'll go on board with the 35 car for a moment, but once again showing how difficult it is to follow over the top of the mountain. Mistake from Stachecki on the exit. Manages to keep it out of the concrete from Forest Elbow, but this is a potential opportunity now for Gates as she closes in the slipstream to the 144 car. Hogging the left-hand side is Tcheki as they make their way towards the chase. Equal performance, of course, between these two cars. Now side by side, the two Mercedes over the crest. Tricky to go through there. Tcheki maintaining that inside line. Can he get it stopped on the run in towards 21? And he does. So Alexa Gates will have to bide her time and go for another opportunity as Casangina made a mistake behind, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think he just slightly over-rotated as he came in.
Yeah, it was a chunk of curb that upset the Porsche there.
Maybe tried to match the line of the Mercedes, and as we said before, Mercedes really stable and can really munch its way through some curbs. It's quite a nice car for, say, for beginners as well. You can really make a few mistakes or really take some massive chunks of curb, and the Mercedes just gobbles them up and spits them out the back end quite happily compared to some of its competitors.
Yeah.
Noah Giacomelli battle that was going on earlier on. Giacomelli actually got past Noah earlier when there was that incident. Just they were starting to go up the mountain. I think that was in cutting, wasn't it? But then we cut back to them and they'd swapped places again. So I'm not sure what had happened where Giacomelli had been passed. But yeah, Giacomelli obviously able to match Noah, but not able to get past easily.
Yeah, I also just saw a white flag out for Giacomelli a moment ago, so I wonder if he made a mistake somewhere around the circuit. So yeah, the Ferrari not being able to stick with the Aston Martin. Meanwhile, at the pointier end of the grid, Alexa Gates very much managing to do that with Tcheki. We also saw Casangina on the back of that mistake. Initially, it was just a small over-rotation. Actually allowed Alessio Mellis to make his way past in towards 6th place. And now a Porsche driver has Seminara for company, last week's race winner. So we're going to have a couple of drag races, I think. Alexa Gates dropped back a little bit on the exit Forest Elbow, so I don't think Tcheki is going to be contested this time around. We'll go on board the diffuser of Casangina as that BMW starts to loom closer and closer in this rear view. The BMW so much more speed down the Conrod straight here, but it would have to be a cent and a half. He's gained 3 tenths, 4 tenths now as they get towards 21 there, but the BMW I don't think is quite going to be close enough on this occasion, but I think maybe could be one more lap on even as far as the drag race towards turn 2, and that BMW is looking very feisty and looking like he wants to get past in towards P7 very swiftly.
Yeah, I think that slight show of weakness, that small little chink in the armour they're showing from Casangina, and as I said, Seminara will want to take full advantage of that and see if he can slide up the inside somewhere. It's those little mistakes that give the competitors a little bit of hope. They might be really equally lapping, but when you see someone makes that tiny little mistake, you think, yes, there we go, there's my opportunity. I need to get closer this time round on the next lap. You know, they can just try and take advantage of those. And to be fair, looking at it still now, Alexa Gates and Tcheki still absolutely going at it, coming up the mountain now, absolutely nose to tail, nothing between these two drivers.
Yellow flag for Avelay! He's still going, but Avelay, I think, for the first time in this race, has had an issue on the mountain, and he has. Very well composed, though, through there. That could have been so much worse. He went wide on the exit of turn 10, ran it through the gravel, and how in all of that he only lost half a second, I have no idea. And the yellow flag out for now the 910 car. It's Arnaud Brun on the exit of Murray's Corner then. A very unusual issue. Goes very deep on the brakes, and then almost into the wall on the exit of the final turn there as well. So a couple of uncharacteristic mistakes from two of our drivers in this grid, just showing how quickly the mountain can bite you back and really show that you have to respect it during the entire race distance, because it can go wrong so quickly.
Yeah, I think luckily Avelay, as soon as they were coming over the crest, they tried to do that little turn to the left and realised the car wasn't going to do it. Rather than trying to commit and stay on.
Seminara contact with Casangina on the run through of a chase. Almost sent the Porsche around. It was all twitchy on the run through 21 and 22. They somehow keep it pointing in the right direction. Sorry to cut you off there again, Tim. We've got a face full of BMW on the camera, and I thought for a moment it had gone so much worse.
No, when it's incidents like that, got to cut away from the old technical chat. But I think, yeah, Avelay just realised the car wasn't going to turn in and just decided better to just take a wider line, go through the gravel, lose, say, half a second to a second, was just the right move, really well caught as well. Like, you could just see the way the car just twitched, caught immediately, and just recovered through the gravel.
Yeah, without doubt. I'm sure, though, the Spanish driver who has been dominant so far, yeah, he lost a total of a second as Alexa Gates almost pushing Stachecki up towards the cutting. Now Stachecki trying to fend off the number 35 Mercedes car. Of course, Stachecki was one of the drivers that went on that much earlier pit stop strategy, and we weren't entirely sure whether it was going to pay off. For right now, Alexa Gates pushing on, trying to reclaim that position. Also, in terms of battle for P2, Fazekas has found a little bit of a swing in his step again and has managed to extend the advantage back over 2 seconds to Josh Waring in that battle for P2. But right now, it's Alexa Gates versus Stachecki down through a dipper, and then the three-way fight between Melis, Casangina, and Seminara shortly behind in the fight for P5 is also taking place. Gates not the best exit at Forest Elbow again, and that really is one of the best opportunities. So we'll hop back with Seminara, who is the closest he has been for quite a while. Last week's race winner in a pretty Titanic style. It was these two that were scrapping out in the final laps, and I think now the BMW maybe finally has the run that he needs, looking towards the right hand side, the inside line, heading in towards the chase there as they fly past our camera. A little bit of a twitch before the braking zone from the BMW, so tricky. Over the bump, Casangina takes a chunk of curb and manages to avoid contact there, and it's the Italian driver of Seminara that makes his way through into P7, and Casangina down into P8 now.
The flash of the lights there, I noticed, from Casangina, maybe sort of saying to Seminara, hang on, you didn't give me too much room there, and had to take a lot of curb, which ultimately did lose him the position. But I think that was pretty much fair racing. I don't think the door was slammed too hard by Seminara there. But yeah, definitely a little bit of an upset from Casangina. That flash of the lights clearly stating, hang on, mate, maybe you need to give me a bit more room on the apex. But I doubt we'll see a post-race review on that one. Speaking of post-race reviews, I was amazed after last race at Hungaroring that nobody put in a single request for incident to be reviewed. Really surprised. I know obviously we get asked in the chat quite often on the YouTube chat. People like say, you know, will there be penalties? Is there live stewarding? Now, there isn't live stewarding for Tier 2. Simply because all the way from Tier 2 to Tier 10 are all racing at the exact same time this evening, so there's way too many people to be trying to keep an eye on everything. But you can do post-race reviews, but it is down to the drivers involved in the incident, or just someone that sees the incident on track. Even if you just had to avoid an incident and you lost some time, you can put in a request. But if people don't put requests in, there's no need to investigate as far as the the race directors are concerned, and so they won't get investigated. And so amazingly,
sorry, we were just Matt York, we were just going on board with him for a moment as he was hunting down Jimmy Holm, and they got it all wrong on the entry towards the dipper. Thankfully they managed to keep it pointing in a straight line and shortcut across there, but I thought that was going to be a much more severe incident for the number 65 car. But yeah, absolutely right. You know, we kind of run these races not really knowing how official the results are going to be by the end of them. But yeah, I suppose it's good to see in a way that when no one looks to put in any sort of review afterwards, that they must be relatively content with what's taken place in the race, even if they're still perhaps a little bit frustrated from time to time with some smaller incidents.
Yeah, obviously small incidents people will let go, but yeah, there were some reasonable incidents last week that didn't get mentioned. But there we go. Matt York still super aggressive on Holm. I actually thought I was going to see him move into the final turn, coming into Hell Corner now. He's on the outside. Is he going to try and get the switchback? He is. Well, I think he actually had to check on the brakes fairly a large amount actually mid-turn. Then had a massive run on Holm, but just wasn't able to do anything. Although now, I never thought I'd say the words, the Audi stretching its legs against the Honda. This is a parallel universe compared to last season when the Honda was just a blisteringly fast car in a straight line.
Oh, that's brave.
It's all the way around the outside. I mean, they gave each other room, but goodness gracious, that was super brave of Matt York trying to hold on to that position. And if he'd managed to stay on the outside line, he would have really come into his own here. But it's going to be one more lap at least where Holm is in front of York.
I think there's been a mistake for Seminara. Seminara over the top of the mountain suddenly lost a chunk of time to Alessio Mellis, and I did see what looked to be a pretty severe amount of damage on the side of that car. So I think, unfortunately, for the Italian driver hunting down his compatriot, you see now they're coming through in towards McPhillamys Park. Is it an issue on the exit of this curb and onto the grass, and then down in towards the dipper, gathers it all up? Oh, in actual fact, so that was some damage that was already there on board the car. I thought that was something new. But Seminara actually doing a surprisingly good job, much like Avelay, to try to keep that all composed in the end. Only losing about half a second or so, and Casangina in the Porsche, obviously we know it's going to be very tricky for that car to make up position. So the BMW manages to live to fight for another day. Yeah, I mean, that car has clearly taken a bit of a battering. There's a few marks on it. So I have to see if that affects his performance later in this race. Only less than 10 minutes to go, of course. And also a gap that has kind of maintained itself after having been very close for a while is Alexa Gates versus Stachecki. It looked like Gates in the number 35 Mercedes was really in the groove for trying to make the move up in towards P4. Had a couple of good goes at it, particularly on this run up in towards turn 4. It was very difficult to make an opportunity happen in this part of the lap, but over the last few laps it's stayed pretty stagnant around half second, 7/10. So still having to bide her time for the time being, and now opens up to a second, so it's going to be tricky then.
Yeah, around the outside into Quarry. Sorry to cut you off there, but he's trying to go around the outside again, not able to make it work.
Yeah, Jimmy Holm just doing what he needs to do on that inside line, and it's so difficult as Matt York really flirting with the outer edges of the track. They're almost into concrete on the entry in towards the cutting, but yeah, unfortunately unsuccessful move from the number 65 car. Once again, he'll have to try something different, but sometimes he can just get a bit stuck around here. If that's one of the only places. Oh, there was a bit of contact, I think, for Horchie in the background there. Looked like he clipped the wall in that Mercedes as they came over the crest of 9. Yeah, he did. Actually clobber the concrete there. So not ideal for the number 43 car. But, and it got worse again!
That was a big hit that time as well. That was more than just a glancing blow. That was really bad.
Oh, yeah, we just caught it as we came out of one replay. We immediately, unfortunately, went straight into another of unfortunately having a rather dramatic confrontation with the wall there through the last part of the dipper. Meanwhile, our race leader Avelay still in the 201s. Impressively though, Fazekas almost matching him on the last lap. And we did get a 2-minute time from Avelay in the end. 15.2 seconds is the gap at the moment between your two at the front of the field. It's then almost 3 seconds again down to Josh Waring, who has Stachecki and Alexa Gates maybe working together a little bit between these two as they look to try to close in potentially for a podium. Jay Fang has been closing up the gap to Podens. Now he tries to look for a run towards the outside of turn 2, or late move over to the left-hand side from Podens there. I'm not sure if the Beamer will be too happy about that one, but thankfully they get through there safe and sound in the end. But yeah, you have to be careful because it can go wrong so quickly. And just for, you know, I mean, we've seen time and time again, just holding that inside line as white flag for Matt York on the run up towards turn 2. What happened there for the Audi driver as he looks towards the inside, bails out the move, and then yeah, just has to take a bit of a wide line in the end. But thankfully nothing more severe than that.
But there was a mistake. Oh, you're on the replay, aren't you? But there was a mistake there from Holm, and Matt York nearly able to take advantage. Holm just recovered in time, but again, these two absolutely bumper to bumper. I know obviously this battle's going on all over the field, but certainly on my screen, I am pretty much glued to this battle, waiting for something to happen. Every braking zone, Matt York is all over the back of Holm, but unable to actually make the move stick.
We have got a couple of battles that are starting to unfold now. Further up with Alexa Gates looking towards the inside line for the first time on Stachecki. Can't make it stick. Oh, and poor Casangina. Casangina was firmly alongside on our screen with Seminara out of Forest Elbow, who's gone wide on the exit of 22 there. And Casangina, who was firmly, like I say, well past the rear axle of that BMW, was nowhere to be seen by the time they got to the end of that straight. So that Porsche, unfortunately, just really suffering with that straight line speed deficit. As Matt York now, best opportunities, and so far almost contact through the chase there, but manages to finally make his way past the Honda of the 777 car up into 14th position. He had to find a different place to do it because Jimmy Holm was making it very difficult on the run up towards turn 2, but eventually the pace advantage goes in favour of the Audi. Similar story perhaps for Giacomelli versus Neuwirth behind. I think the Ferrari, though, is going to have to wait a little bit longer, although Neuwirth, small mistake, tiny bit of contact on the exit there as well as they now head in towards Murray's corner. Neuwirth back towards the outside line. Giacomelli closing under braking, but can't make it stick in the end.
Yeah, these two have been absolutely going at it like a pair of angry Jack Russells for the entire race, haven't they? Sort of back and forth, landing a few blows, nothing too serious. Oh, good run here, though, by Giacomelli. I reckon he might have a decent run if he could just stay on the back. Look at this, Neuwirth knowing to defend that right-hand side of the circuit. He wants the inside line for that turn. He knows it's going to be hard to get around the outside, although does finally move over to the left.
Oh, that was close.
Just closes the door. And again, Giacomelli stuck behind him through the mountain one more time. 4 minutes and 30 seconds left on the clock. If anyone's got anything left in the tank, now is the time to unleash it and see what they can do.
Neuwirth almost into the wall on the run up through Quarry there, and again, really the Aston absolutely pushing the track limits. Giacomelli much cleaner.
Yeah, there was a big scuff there, wasn't there, from the...
I say that. I spoke too soon. Giacomelli over the grass on the exit of turn 10 there. So the pair of them actually trying to extract everything and a bit more out of their cars on the final few laps. Small mistake and a slide from the Italian driver will open up that gap again. One that is firmly coming to a close, though. Right now, once more, is Fang versus Podens in the battle for the final positions inside the top 10. As meanwhile, just checking, whereabouts is our race leader, who really has not had much on-screen coverage today. He's just been in a world of his own. 15 seconds clear of Fazekas, and should, I think, make his way round twice more. I think there'll be 2 more laps of this race, this one included. So not much further left to go, and not many more opportunities for these other drivers that are scrapping to the end, but they are each pushing each other as hard as they possibly can.
Oh, Sacchecki and Gates really, really close. I think a slight mistake from Gates there, just coming through. Oh, which one of that would have? I guess it would have been Reed Park. That kind of
yeah,
area.
It was.
Not sure if there was contact with the barrier or not, but it was definitely a little bit too far left.
I think it was just avoided, actually, by skin of her teeth in all of that. Number 35 car, yeah, almost clobbering the exit wall of turn 6, but yeah, that gap has now opened up to 1.2 seconds.
Well, that might have been a hit, actually, on Forest Elbow. I think there may have been a touch.
Oh, I think something's happened at the tail end of the top 10 as well. We were checking on board the replay. Yeah, you're right. Alexa Gates did hit the wall there, but it's all kicked off further down the order with Jay, Fang, Podens and Ritchie. So we'll go back on the replay. We'll try to catch what happened, because it was the Aston of Podens. Went a little bit wide on the run-up before the dipper, but kept it all clean and together. No issues through here so far. So is it going to be a dive under braking? It's not. It's a mistake from Podens there that then ends up lodged into the wall. And Ritchie manages to make his way past safe and sound. Steinhauser is immediately on the attack of the fellow Aston Martin of Podens, now just in front, as Avila has just started the final lap of the race now. But yeah, a mistake there right at the end of the dipper for Podens. They're losing 2, maybe even 3 positions in the process of all of that.
At this point in the race, it's got to be not only the fatigue on the tyres, but also the fatigue on the drivers themselves. It's really easy to start making mistakes. You've had that person in front of you lap after lap after lap. You haven't found your way past. You're desperate to do something. And this is where little mistakes like that can happen. And actually, Podens now under attack from Steinhauser. So Aston versus Aston. And Steinhauser, a Tier 2 veteran driver. He's been here a long old time now. Really, really good driver. Just doesn't always seem to be able to sew together an entire season. You know, really could be up there with the best of them. He's just not quite able to sort of, as we said, stitch together all the races and keep being consistent. But really fast driver. And again, Podens will know that Steinhausen is part of the old guard. He will know that Steinhauser is not going to roll over easily and just let him get away. He will know that there was a mistake. He'll know Podens is struggling, and he'll know that car is now carrying damage.
Yeah, without a doubt. Also, I do believe the race engineer lied to us ever so slightly, because Avalé is going to start one more lap by the looks of it, because I don't think he quite has enough time to completely park it. And so this will be the final lap of the race that gets underway now. Alexa Gates still pushing on to the back. Ostachecki, we've got a yellow flag out for the 910 car. We'll try to grab that in a moment. Seminara close up to the back of Alessio Mellis again. And it's all kicking off further down the order as Giacomelli's going flying backwards down in towards the dip. But what has happened there to the Italian drivers? Got it all wrong on the exit of McPhillamys then. And Barraven managing to keep out of the way of that. And the Italian number 6 car retires to the pit lane. The 910 car, that was Arnaud Brun that brought out a yellow flag somewhere. But in all of that, we didn't quite catch what was going on because we went from one incident to the next. Just keeping an eye, number 23 car still has half a lap to go. Meanwhile, Gates unable to get past the Cecchi. Seminara, Casangino and Mellis still scrapping for this battle for P6. So there is still a lot on the line in the closing stages of this race. These two actually probably battling for honours right now in the championship, because only, or Seminara I think will actually maintain the championship lead, even if they do swap around. White flag for Avalé. What was that for? That's always a scary moment. What happened for our race leader as they came through the dipper? In actual fact, I think the answer to that is precisely nothing. And that was just a bit of extra caution perhaps for the final run through that part of the lap. Just not wanting to make any mistakes at this point in the race.
Yeah, we obviously saw there was mistakes sort of early on where we saw that car at the top of the hill actually going through Solomon Park and Philamy Park, just through there. So I'm guessing, yeah, just slowing down a little bit. Got some time to play with. This is the final lap.
Neuwirth had a yellow flag incident there just a moment ago. I think actually may have just been emerging from the pits in all of that. So the overlay being a little bit on the overly concerned side. But yes, Avalé, a dominant victory drive for him. 14 seconds the margin over the rest of the field. Exceptional stuff from him. Fazekas should be able to cross the line in P2. We've got Gates versus Tachecki on the final run up towards Murray's corner. I don't think Alexa Gates is going to be able to make that one. Six to Tachecki's undercuts did end up paying off in the end by the looks of it. Great scrap over the last few laps between those two, and Mellis looks like he will hold off Seminara. Christian Steinhauser and Podens battling on the run in towards the chase there. Aston versus Aston, but I think Podens has just about managed to defend that one enough and will also maintain position. So a lot of drivers there in the end unable to make up moves on the final lap of this race.
Yeah, looking like Matt York holding on to 14th place as well, unless Holm can do something pretty crazy. Yeah, I did, obviously you said earlier on there was a yellow flag out for car number 910, one of the Ferraris, and I am seeing it in the chat as well. I did think it looked like the car was running slowly, apparently run out of fuel.
Oh, that is so disappointing. That's very unfortunate. Easy mistake to make as well. Yeah, plenty of drivers have done it. We've seen it also happen in the likes of, Tier 1 as well. And, they are really the best of the best that we have here in AOR. So, yeah, it is unfortunate, easy mistake that can be made. And, when you've got so much other pressure on you around this circuit and just trying to keep it all together and throughout and survive to the end, you have so much stuff you're trying to keep on top of that, sometimes tire pressures, fuel loads, all of that stuff, it can just escape you a little bit. But that will be it then for today's race. But Alejandro Avalé, take a bow. The number 23 car, what a stellar performance that he had this evening.
and he actually is ready for an interview already, which is an absolute miracle. We never get the our pole sitter ever to come in for an interview, so we will drag them in. Well, as soon as you're ready, let me know, John, and I will bring them on into the interview box.
Yeah, I think we should more or less be good to go in just a moment. Yeah, I think that's about the quickest interview that we've had, or quickest entry for interview that we have had as well. So it's great. He's obviously maintained his fine form throughout the evening and also into the commentary box. So yeah, let's bring in your race winner for this evening. So Alejandro, can you hear us? Okay.
Yes, I can hear you.
What an absolutely stellar performance from you today. Absolutely stormed into pole position, clear the rest of the field by a good 10th as well. And then, a little bit of a gift perhaps with Grabowski having to start from the pit lane, but you did not look back. It was absolutely clinical, but I think besides one small error that happened to catch over the top of the mountain at one point, other than that, it was just absolutely spotless performance. You must be chuffed to bits with that one.
Yes, I was a bit surprised at the beginning when I saw the other Honda at box, but yeah, I had to be focused because this car is a bit deadly in the downhill. But well, yeah, that error at the end of the race, I think it was I touched the floor and I went to the gravel, but it was only a scary moment. Luckily, I didn't finish in the wall.
Yeah, we saw there was the car did look, it was slightly unsettled at the top of the mountain, but managed to catch it in just a little bit of a small trip through the gravel. So really good save there. That was at the midway point in the race. But 15 seconds in front of your next competitor. That is unbelievable. The pace we've had here this evening has been so close, but it all looked like it was in that first half of the race where you just managed to keep pulling away from the pack. I mean, as we said, like absolutely stellar drive, like round of applause this evening for that one. I mean, the pace you had in the Mercedes so early in the race that's the first time we've seen the Mercedes come alive like that at circuit.
Well, I was pushing hard in the first half of the race because I had to make a big gap, but in the second half I had to save a few because it was really close. So the second half of the race I had to make it on map 2. So I was saving up fuel, but the pace didn't fall down, so I'm proud of it.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. That's exceptional, though, even that as well. So in the second half of the race, where you were still more or less faster than the rest of the grid throughout that entire stint, that you were actually in fuel-saving mode. So I think, that in itself as a comment just summarises the dominance that you were showed this evening. Absolutely incredible performance from you tonight, and should absolutely rocket yourself up through the standings as well in towards the top 10 without shadow of a doubt after all of that. Next week, we're going to be heading to maybe a track that, I could be wrong, but perhaps you won't be quite so fond of, at least in terms of performance with the Mercedes. We're going to Catalonia in next week's action. So how are you feeling potentially for that one? Because I don't think it's going to perhaps quite lend itself as naturally to the Mercedes as Bathurst did.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna be a good race next week because I'm good at rain, but Barcelona with the Mercedes is a bit complicated. I don't think it's gonna be a good race.
Sure, maybe a case of damage limitation for that one next week. I only just caught the 100% chance of rain next week, so that's
it's gonna be raining.
It's not too much in the way of changeable conditions either to sort of keep things keep things dynamic on that front. So yeah, maybe a bit of a challenge, but we will be heading to Suzuka. That's probably likely to be a bit more in favour of the Mercedes again, and Nürburgring maybe a bit of a middle of the road kind of track for that car. So still opportunity to score some tremendous points later on in the season. But yeah, an absolutely exceptional performance from you tonight. Took the entire triple, so pole position, race win and fastest lap, and all in dominant style. So huge congratulations to you tonight, Alejandro, and thank you for joining us for an interview as well.
See you for the. Ay. Sorry.
No worries, Alejandro. Thank you very much for joining us. See you next week.
Thanks to you.
Thank you.
Amazing stuff there to hear from our race winner, because it is a luxury sort of over the last kind of couple of seasons that we've had. We don't usually get to talk to our race winners all too often. Like I say, Alejandro, in the same way that he conducted that entire race of blistering pace, he was in here like an absolute bullet. I mean, admittedly, he did finish the race about a quarter of a minute before anyone else, so to some extent it's maybe not too surprising, but just an absolutely just perfect put together and executed race from him today, wasn't it?
Yeah, it really was a masterclass. Got to say hats off also to Fazekas as well. Really good drive by him. Bit of a shame, obviously, to see was it car number 41 starting from the pit?
Grabowski.
Yeah, that would have been a real nice opportunity for him to sort of really show the pace at the front. But also hats off to drivers like Alexa Gates. We saw some amazing moves from her this evening, some really good racing. And to be fair, all the way through the grid, some great racing. Jimmy Holm versus York, that was a great little battle to keep an eye on. Neuwirth and Steinhauser. The whole grid had some lovely battles this evening. It's been really nice. And obviously just the ridiculous pace of our pole man. That was just ridiculous. Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, it's the fact it's been the same kind of story from Tier 2 and Tier 1 over the last couple of days. We had Abalatsi that completely disappeared at the front of the field in Tier 1. And then we've had exactly the same thing in a different car tonight in Tier 2 with a grid that was more packed with Hondas of the winning car of last night. So it just. But yeah, an absolutely stellar performance without a shadow of doubt. One of the most dominant victories, especially around a circuit like here at Bathurst. It is just so difficult to have that level of pace for so long throughout the race and to be fuel saving in the second half of the race. Just absolutely, he was a ballistic missile tonight on the circuit. So Spanish driver doing an absolutely stellar job. May struggle next week, as he's already alluded to, but a fantastic performance nonetheless. And admittedly, the last time that we had quite an abundance of rain, I do believe that he ended up finishing up on the podium at Kota on that. So obviously he had a bit more of a dynamic strategy there, but he quite clearly knows what he's doing in the wet with that car. And yeah, I think that also, Barnabas Fazekas, by far his best result of the season so far. He's been praised for some fantastic moves up through the field, of gaining several positions over the previous 3 rounds. But this time was the first time we've really seen him come alive in terms of having a car underneath him that he felt confident to push with and really extract the performance out of, and he did it beautifully in that Lamborghini. He got a very strong P2, so I'm sure that he'll also be making his way up through the order in the standings as well. So absolutely fantastic stuff from our Tier 2 drivers, as always, and of course Bathurst playing host to amazing, incredible action, as we have always come to expect from this circuit. So if you have liked what you have been watching this evening, because I don't think we'll have any more interviews for this evening, then do consider supporting the channel and subscribing. And also, you can head over to apexonline.racing to see all of the action and championships AOR has to offer, not just on ACC and not just on PC, across other platforms and simulators as well. If something else takes your fancy, you can also look at joining the Discord server if you just want to be a part of this amazing growing community and just share all things good motorsport and sim racing related with one another, and join all of that. And of course, Tier 1 will be back on Monday with Rage and Jay, presumably Jay hopefully being bouncing back from his illness. There's been a lot going around that for the commentary booth over the last couple of weeks, so they will be covering Tier 1 next week, and then myself and Tim will be back once again, same time, same place, for what looks to be a rather wet Catalonia for our drivers to contend with. So no doubt that will be a good one as well. And final comments from you, Tim, for today, because we've got to do Tim Top's pick. We can't finish the stream without Tim's top pick. With that, so any final words from you?
I mean, we saw, they conquered the mountain. It was pretty brilliant driving from everyone this evening. Not too many incidents. Obviously, what we did see wasn't over the top. There was nothing silly going on this evening. Oh God, top pick. I mean, it's really hard, you know, to not just choose our pole man after that ridiculous effort. But actually, who can I go for? I don't know. I'm actually going to give it to Alexa Gates this time round. Just for the fact that there was just constant battles. She managed to keep her positions well. Had some really nice sort of battles going on. We saw her carrying a little bit of damage towards the end of the race, but it was just really good. We kept coming back to that battle. It was over and over again. It was just absolutely top-notch racing the whole way through. I don't think she had any moments to catch a breath, really. I don't think there was any times where that she wasn't either A, being chased, or B, chasing someone down. So yeah, gonna go to Alexa Gates for my top pick this evening.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very fair pick in all of that, and yeah, all of the drivers definitely kept on their toes through tonight's action over the mountain. But yeah, definitely Alexa was part of a lot of our best piece of action on circuit. So fantastic stuff from the mountain as always, and the Tier 2 drivers here in the AOR GT3 series. So join us same time at same place next week for Catalonia with myself and Tim. Always a pleasure again to be sharing the commentary box with you, mate, and look forward to seeing as many of you in the chat as possible next week for Barcelona's GT3 action. So thank you everybody so much for watching, but for tonight then, it's goodbye.
Good night.